All right, so in today's video, we're going to actually just do a quick rundown of how to navigate Twine and actually work on your projects. Hopefully to get a better understanding of how to navigate the relationship between Twine as an editing program and the final project that you're going to be submitting for this class. The first thing you're going to want to do is to actually go to our course homepage and download the hypertext media sample. It should download as a zip file, and all you really have to do is unzip it. And that, in Mac terms, is just double clicking. On different operating systems, you might have to do different things. But all it does is basically open it up so that you can access the files. Now, navigating within this, essentially, I'll just get rid of the zip. Essentially, the structure of this is a overarching file that then holds these different files within it. So one of these is the HTML file. This is your actual project file. So this is where all the editing you're going to be doing in Twine is going to live. So this is what folks are going to double click in order to actually play your game, if you will. The other subfolders are an images folder, a video folder, and a music folder. Now, technically, you can kind of call these whatever you want, but for the purposes of what we're going to be doing here, it's a lot easier to just organize them by these three categories. Within them, I have placed sample files so that the project has something to pull from. So if I were to just go ahead and double click this project, you can get an idea of what it looks like. What you would find is it is relatively basic, relatively bland. It gives you a welcome screen, and you can choose between these three different media types in order to get an idea for how they look within Twine. But we'll actually look in the Twine backend to see how they're actually built. So there's an audio page, which will play audio. There's an imagery page, which will show an image. And there's a video page, which has an embedded video that auto plays. Okay, we'll move that out of the way. So that's all well and good, but you want to actually be able to edit these things. In order to do that, you want to use something called Twine. Twine is a really basic, somewhat user-friendly program that allows you to use HTML in order to create interactive media, very basic interactive media. In order to access that, you would simply go to twinery.org, and within twinery.org, you have a couple options. One is to download the desktop app. This is more stable. It can be easier if you are able to download it and use it on your computer. There can be various reasons that it doesn't play nice with certain operating systems or certain firewalls or anything like that. So if you find that you can't seem to get it to download and open properly, you can use the program in your browser, which is what I'm going to show you today. The process is largely the same. It's the only difference is that the online browser-based version will usually clear the memory of your project if you don't access it once every couple days. So if you plan on editing and then don't return for a week, it might disappear. So keep that in mind. So in order to use it in your browser very easily, click use in your browser, and it should bring you to a page like this. So you don't have any stories here. So what we're actually going to do is upload the hypertext media sample so that we can get an idea of how the code is written in order to edit it and use it for our own purposes. So if we go over to library, we can click import and choose file, and we can go to the downloads, hypertext media sample, and there's that HTML document. That's the important part. That's the actual code that runs our game. So we'll open that and it'll load directly, and now we have one story in here, and I'll simply double click on it. And this is the general user interface. There isn't a lot to this. Basically, these are what I would call nodes. Each of these individual nodes have text within them. So I can double click in that passage and it shows the welcome screen, which we already saw earlier. Hi, welcome to my test file for the Hypertext Media Project. From here, you can choose to check out audio, imagery, and video. And you'll notice there's these double brackets on either side. What happens is when I'm actually writing code in here, I can create a new pathway to a new node, and all I have to do is put in those double brackets. So new node, double bracket, and when I click out, now that new node has created itself over here, and I can double click in there. Just kidding. Okay, so now if I were to play this game, you would find that this home page would have an extra node, and I'll show that to you in just a moment. So that's your basic way of adding a new pathway to a new node, just the double brackets. Now, each of these is designed in order to show you how to embed specific types of media. The first of these is audio. Um, Audio is very straightforward. You'll see you're basically calling for audio. That's what that part of the language is. You're calling audio. I need audio. You're saying I have a source, and that source, you have to be able to show a pathway to where that source lives. Now, in this case, what I've done is I've said it's in music. So if your HTML project file is within a folder with a folder called music, like this right here, it'll say, oh, I'm going to that. I want to look in that music folder. And then within that music folder, I want to look for the ICU final MP3. And note that this is all largely case sensitive, and you have to be very, very specific and match the exact keystrokes for the file names. So for instance, if I took the space out of between I and C, it wouldn't be able to find that file anymore. It would just say it's a broken link. There's nothing there. So I want to make sure that space is in there. I want to make sure that the folder that it's looking for is titled music, not Muzak, or not music with a capital M. It all has to match. And then finally, the last piece of this code is I put in for it to autoplay when you go to this specific node. All right. Similarly, if we look at imagery, imagery does the same thing. It calls, in this case, for an image, img. What's its source? It needs a source, and that source is to look in the images folder, which is over here, and it wants to look for one.jpg, which is there as well. Again, it needs to match perfectly. It needs to match perfectly the file type. It needs to match perfectly the title. And then finally, I cast it in there with a width of 800 pixels. And this can be a range of different things. You can use pixels, you can use percentage, you can do a whole bunch of things, but this is your basic way of controlling width. You can individually control width and height in different aspects of the image, but for our purposes, if you choose one of these, then it'll automatically scale the image in the other axes, if you will. All right, and then finally, video. Again, it's similar. There's some slight variations just because video has a lot more controls. But again, in this case, we need to find a video. We need a source of some sort. And that source, we need to look in the video folder, which is right over here. There it is. And in this case, I want the ICU final.m4v. Now, after this, I put in for it to autoplay. So when people go to that node, it'll automatically play it. It'll loop. So as soon as the video is done, it should loop again. It puts in controls so that people can actually control the video there. And again, I put in a height, in this case, 300 pixels. Okay, so let's say I wanted to put in a new image, embed an additional image into our project in this new node. Well, the easiest way for me to do that is to double click on image. I'm going to copy this code, img source images.one. And I'm going to toss that over in here. Now, if I were to compile this project and play it right now, it would show the same image that it has over in the imagery section. But I don't want to use that image. I want to use a new image. I'm going to use a screenshot of our project here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just take a screenshot here. And then once that screenshot loads, I'm going to move that over into this folder area. Okay, now I have a problem. My problem is that file name is way too long. So I'm going to keep this simple. I'm going to call this picture 2. Now this is a PNG file because of the way that I captured it, but as long as I've got the correct file type, I'm good. Now I can drag this down into images, and now I have another image for the game to look for within that images folder. So again, it's important that it's in the folder because otherwise the game doesn't know where to look. So now, instead of it looking in images for one.jpg, I want it to look for 2.png. So I simply change the name. The width is fine. I'm not really worried about the size. And now it should be saved and correct. So what we've done in this little bit is we've navigated the program. We've looked at how the code functions for audio, imagery, and video. We've created a new node, which is saying just kidding and adding another image. And we've talked about how to change file types. Now we need to talk about how to actually access the game, because this is just an editor. The Twinery is just an editor. Right now it's not doing anything. I can test this, test my story. Okay, I can build it out, test it, or play it, but it's not going to actually be able to function since it's in browser, because it can't look, it's not actually in the folder with all of my files. It doesn't have any way to look for it. So all the files, all the file pathways would be broken. So what I need to do in order to actually view this is I need to publish it to file. So if I click publish to file, it's going to say, hey, I'm publishing the file. And it'll pop up here, and it's Hypertext Media Sample. Now, that's all well and good, but if I double click it, it's not going to actually work because it's not inside the file structure with the images, video, and music. It's on the outside looking in. So I need to drag it into the Hypertext Media Sample file. And what I'll get is this little warning that says, oh no, there's already a file here. In this case, this is not an accident. I know that I'm replacing it, so I'm going to go ahead and replace. Perfect. The other thing I have done here is I have been using the downloads folder in order to view all of this. Now, generally, it doesn't cause any problems. Intermittently, there have been instances where people have had issues trying to use the downloads folder for this. So I'm going to create a new folder, an untitled folder on my desktop, and I'm just going to drag this whole thing, so the whole Hypertext Media thing, out into this untitled folder. So it's no longer living in my downloads folder. It now has its own folder, which we can bring over here. Okay, so if I double click, let's view this as a list. So now we have everything here. We have our new Hypertext Media Sample folder document. We have the folders for our images, music, and video. And now we can test it. So I'm going to double click that. Oh, see, we have a new node. We created our new node. So if I go back over here, this is that new node we created. All right. Now, when I click on it, you'll notice it doesn't say this part. It doesn't actually say the code. The code is hidden because I'm just calling for media. I'm calling for an image in this case. So if I click on new node, there's the screenshot that we created. Okay, because it's looking in the images folder for 2.png. Now, if I were to make a change in the editor over here and say, just kidding, no, I'm not. And then I could refresh this, but it's not going to show up here. Why? Because I need to publish it out of Twine and replace this file over in my project. So I'll close that out. I'm going to publish the file again. And then I'm going to bring over this new file out of my downloads. It's going to ask me to replace it. Yep, I'm going to replace it. And now it's going to pop up. I can double click, bring it over here, and check in the new node. Does it say it? Yep. Just kidding. No, I'm not. So just like that, that is how you actually structure this. Now, there are really complex things you can do with Twine. For the purposes of our project, we're really asking for a few simple things. Okay. So we want you to use at least 2 story, as in speaking, descriptive voice tracks, and at least 2 atmospheric, music or ambient tracks, and at least 2 image files from your still image project. So these can be really any 2 images. It can be any 4 audio tracks, 2 speaking, 2 ambient. We do ask that these be tracks that you've created for our class. So if you wanted to use, say, create new sound effects for your project, that's totally fine, but you would need to create them yourself for this class explicitly. If you go beyond the 2 story and 2 ambient tracks and 2 images, then you are welcome to pull from other places, but you need to be very clear which files you've actually pulled from our class. Additionally, your project should have at least 8 different nodes or pages. So when we pull them into the Twine editor, there should be at least 8 different nodes feeding into one another. And I showed you how to create the pathways between nodes using the double brackets. Fundamentally, the idea is that your project gives users an experience within digital space. So we want you to be creative, but we really want you to sort of exude the sense of space using Twine.